Nobody told you were allowed to grieve this, because nothing technically ended. Nobody died. Nobody even left, at least not in a way anyone else could see. You just loved someone who did not love you back, and you were supposed to be fine with that. Move on. Let it go. Stop thinking about someone who clearly was not thinking about you. But here you are, still replaying the almost, still trying to understand what you meant to them, still waking up at 3 a.m., turning it over like if you just think about it one more time, it will finally make sense. And somewhere underneath all of that, there is a voice, probably one that sounds a lot like the people around you, that says you are being ridiculous, that you are grieving something that was never even real, that you need to get over it and move on already. I want to say something to that voice. It's wrong. What you're feeling is grief, legitimate, clinically real, nervous system level grief. And the reason it is so disorienting is that nobody gave you permission to have it, because from the outside, there is nothing to grieve. But you know what you lost. You lost the version of the future you had already started building in your mind. You lost the version of yourself that felt most alive when you were close to them. You lost the possibility. And that loss is real, even if the relationship never fully was. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and today we're going to talk about why unrequited love hurts the way it does, and what it is actually telling you about yourself that has nothing to do with them. So a quick note before we go any further, everything here is for educational purposes only. I'm a licensed therapist, but I'm not your therapist. If you're in crisis, please call or text 988. Okay. Let's go. Let me give you the clinical picture first because I think it actually helps to understand what's happening to your nervous system. When you develop strong feelings for someone, your brain does not distinguish between the reality of the relationship and the possibility of it. It processes both as real. It builds neural pathways around this person, their face, their voice, the anticipation of seeing them, the particular way you feel when they give you their attention. Those pathways are real. Their neurochemistry is real. The attachment is real, even if it was never returned. And when unrequited love ends, when the possibility finally closes, your brain experiences that as a loss. Not a symbolic loss, an actual loss. The same neurological response that activates when you lose someone or something that mattered to you. This is why it feels like grief, because it is grief. Grief researchers describe 5 things that make a loss hard to process, and unrequited love hits almost every single one of them. 1, the loss is ambiguous. There's no clear ending, no defined before and after. You can't point to the moment it ended because it technically never really began. 2, the loss is disenfranchised. Society doesn't recognize it as real grief. You do not get the sympathy cards. You do not get the time off work. You do not get a casserole on your doorstep. You're expected to just be fine. 3, the loss involves a living person, which means you have to process grief while the person you are grieving is still alive, still visible, still existing in the world in a way that people who have lost someone to death do not have to navigate. And perhaps most painful, the loss includes the death of a possible self. The version of you that was going to be loved by this specific person. That version does not get to exist, and that is a real loss. You're not grieving something imaginary. You're grieving the future you had already started living in your mind. That future was real to your nervous system, and losing it is a real loss. Here's where it gets clinical and a little uncomfortable. Unrequited love almost never exists in isolation. It almost always attaches to something older. The intensity you feel towards someone who cannot or will not love you back, that intensity is not just about them. Part of it is about a wound that existed before them. In my clinical experience, people who repeatedly experience intense unrequited love, or who find themselves more drawn to unavailable people than the ones who are genuinely accessible, are often people whose early attachment taught them that love requires longing, that love is something you reach for rather than something that simply exists between two people, that the feeling of wanting, of not quite having, of almost, but not yet, is what love feels like. And so, available Reciprocal love can feel, well, flat, wrong, like something's missing. What is missing is the longing. And the longing is so familiar it has been mistaken for love. I want to be careful here because I'm not saying that your feelings are not real or that the person did not matter. They did. You felt what you felt. I'm saying the intensity of what you felt may have been amplified by something that started long before this person existed in your life. And that is worth sitting with. The person you loved is not just a person. They are also a symbol of something your heart has been reaching for since long before you met them. Understanding that is not diminishing what you felt, it is the beginning of understanding yourself. I want to say one thing directly before the action steps. Unrequited love is expensive, not just emotionally, though it is that too. It costs you your presence. Every hour you spend replaying the almost is an hour you are not living in your actual life, not building the things you want to build, not noticing the people who are actually available to you. It costs you your self-perception. When someone does not choose you, it is very easy, almost automatic, to absorb that as evidence about your worth, to conclude that if someone that wonderful did not want you, there must be something wrong with you. There isn't. Unreciprocated love is not a referendum on your value. It's information about compatibility and availability. And sometimes it's information about the other person's capacity to love anyone at all. It costs you your standards. The longer you remain in the emotional orbit of someone who is not choosing you, the more normal that dynamic begins to feel. And normal starts to look like the baseline for what you will accept. So here are 2 things that we should work on. Step 1, give yourself the grief, not indefinitely, but really, stop treating this like something you should already be over. Stop minimizing it because it was never official. Stop apologizing internally for still feeling it. Sit down and actually acknowledge what you lost. Write it out if that helps you. What were you hoping for? What did it feel like when it felt good? What version of yourself were you when you were near this person? And what did losing that possibility cost you? Then, and this is the part most people skip, grieve that version of yourself too. The one who was going to be chosen. The one who was going to matter in that particular way to that particular person. Let her go with the same care you would bring to any real loss, because she is the one. The next step, get curious about the pattern instead of the person. This is the step that actually creates change. Instead of asking, why did they not choose me? Ask what it was about this specific dynamic that felt so familiar. Not as self-criticism, as genuine curiosity. Was there something about the uncertainty that felt like home? Was the longing itself the feeling you were chasing? Was there a way that being slightly out of reach made this person feel more valuable than people who are actually available to you? You don't have to have all the answers. The question is the work. Because the goal is not just to get over this person. The goal is to understand what it is that keeps you selecting the almost, so that the next time something real and available shows up, you do not find yourself reaching past it for something harder to hold. Getting over someone is a relief. Understanding why you chose them in the first place is freedom. One ends the pain, the other ends the pattern. I want to ask you something. Have you ever been more drawn to someone who was unavailable than someone who was genuinely there for you? Not naming names, just yes or no in the comments. And if you want to say more, what did available feel like compared to unavailable? I would genuinely love to know. If this gave you something real today, subscribe. Every Thursday I show up with clinical truth delivered like your most honest friend. No fluff, no toxic positivity, just the real thing. And if you want to go deeper into your relationship patterns, my Trauma Bond Recovery Workbook is linked below. Built for the woman who is finally ready to understand what keeps happening and why. You were never the problem. See you Thursday.